So, hello and welcome. Just have people jumping in. So, welcome to the session. Good evening to you all. So, my name's Nikki Kimball. I am one of the educational consultants here at Just Too Easy. And today we've got a brand new session. I'm going to close down my. I remember why I closed my my email. It's because it keeps binging. So this is a brand new session that I've designed, and we're going to be looking at digital storytelling made simple. So how to engage students using JIT Mix. So let's have a quick look at what we're going to be doing in today's session. So if this is one of the first sessions that you've been to with me, just a bit of housekeeping because I completely forgot to put this slide in. It is a 45-minute session, so I will be looking to finish by 4:15. You can ask questions as we go along via the chat. So I do have it open on my second screen, which is why I keep glancing over to my right-hand side or left-hand side, whichever side it is. So I will intermittently check the chat. So please feel free, if you've got any questions along the way, just pop them in the chat. I will also do a Q&A session at the end of the session, should you want to know anything more. Now, we are focusing on digital storytelling using JIT Mix this week. So I'm going to try and contextualize storytelling. So I'm going to give you some current research and in particular a paper that I found very useful for planning this session. And I've just drawn some statements from that. So we're going to look at current research to support digital storytelling. We're also going to look at the SAMR model of technology integration, which sounds very complicated, but it's actually, I'm a bit of a tech geek, an ed tech geek, so I find it quite interesting. Some other people might not, but it just really helps you to evaluate maybe what you're doing in your ICT or your computing lessons and thinking of the value that it brings to that particular lesson. So we'll have a look at the SAMR model. We'll have a think about why we should use digital storytelling in your classroom, and then we will get into the actual physical JIT Mix and what it does. So we'll have a quick look at JIT Mix, how it can work. I'll give you some examples of digital storytelling that you can use. I'm also going to show you a planning template. We won't spend too much time on that, but there are some planning templates available within the library. And then we're going to focus on the tools that can be used within JIT Mix. So if you are brand new to Just Too Easy or JIT, JIT is our infant toolkit and Mix falls within that. So it's one of 8 tools within the toolkit. Now, there are 3 in particular that are really suitable for digital storytelling. So those are JIT Write, Paint and Animate. So I'm going to give you a quick rundown of how those work and then how you can put those into JIT Mix to create those lovely, vibrant stories that hopefully you're going to complete with your students. And then we'll have a look at saving and sharing content, and we'll wrap up the session with some questions. So let's get into it, shall we? Right, this is a very interesting paper actually, and as I said, I'm a bit of an ed tech geek. I did do my master's degree in digital technologies in the classroom, but this one is particularly interesting. It is pre-pandemic, so it's getting on a little bit now. It's 6 years old, but it's still really interesting to read. So digital storytelling and young children, so transforming learning through creative use of technology. So I just thought I'd pull some of these statements that I found useful. So digital storytelling is a powerful way to teach children how to create and not just consume media. So this is one of my bugbears, and we'll delve into this a little bit deeper when we look at the SAMR method model, in that I think sometimes teachers mistake using ICT, they confuse it with creating using ICT. Okay, so we want our children to create content, not just consume it. So we don't want them sitting on an app and just, you know, churning out their timetables or their spellings. I think that has a place, but we really want to push that kind of creation. So using media, and when they're learning how to create media, they're learning important modern communication skills. Okay. eBook authoring invites children to practice their artistic skills along with basic writing and reading skills. The tools used for digital storytelling can have many benefits for young children, including language development and increased motivation for literacy tasks. They did find that as a tangible benefit And then lastly, when young children create digital storytelling in the classroom, they learn to thoughtfully plan and create a message for self-expression to share with others. So there's lots of elements to that we can certainly put in place in the 21st century classroom. So being able to plan on a device, being able to create something that is personal to them, being able to choose the mode of self-expression. So are they going to create a story that has pictures in it, that has audio in it, that has a video or an animation in it? So be able to self-express and then to share that work with others. And I think that as well is a very important element. So children can also learn to critically consider their words, the message and the media they include to share their ideas. Okay, so that's how we're going to transform our our writing from just that plain handwriting in a textbook to these kind of vibrant, multi-mode digital storytelling messages that the students can feel proud about and share with others. I'm going to skip on. I forgot to delete that page. So this is the SAMM model. Okay, there is another alternative called the RAT model. So they're very much of a muchness, but I kind of prefer this one. It looks a little bit complex, but actually it does make a lot of sense. Okay, so you start down here, and really you want to aim for R, for redefinition. So you've got substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. Okay, so when we're using technology, ideally in a classroom, you do want to be redefining a task. Okay, so I've got an example here. I've kind of linked it into what we're going to be looking at today. So creating some sort of written work, an ebook, maybe a piece of writing on a page. Okay, so that is the task in itself. So something that you would do in a class without technology, you would write it handwritten in a book. Okay, so then implementing ICT into that task. So for a substitution task, you would have the students type their work instead of handwriting it. Now, it calls into question a little bit of what the benefit of the ICT is in that particular task. It's very important that our students learn how to type, but in terms of the digital storytelling, it's not changing that task at all. It's not adding to it. It's not benefiting it. Okay, it's something they could do without the technology completely. So then we move up to augmentation. So this is where we start to use the technology a little bit to benefit and change that task. So for example, augmentation, having students type their work and utilizing tools such as speech to text to support their spelling. So something that you can't do without that device. Okay, so it's still the core of that activity. Writing out some written work is there, but they're beginning to start using those tools that are available to them to support them through that task. So then we move on to modification. So this example is having students type their work, utilizing those tools such as speech to text to support their spelling, and then publishing that written work in a collaborative space that facilitates peer-to-peer feedback. So really, the really beneficial part of the ICT there isn't so much the actual ebook itself, it's the ability to be able to share that with others in a collaborative way and for them to receive feedback and to be able to put that feedback into place. So that really then will benefit you in that kind of reflect, review process that will help students to improve their writing. Okay, so that is the important aspect in that. So that's the modification. So those are things that they really couldn't do without a device. And then finally, we've got redefinition. So students use online tools such as video and animation creation software to convey the concepts that they would have put on paper in a traditional written assignment. So that is things like creating an ebook that might have some audio in there. It might have a podcast in there. It might have an animation, which we're going to look at in a second. So instead of writing out the scene or the chapter of their book, they create an animation that reflects it. So it's completely redefined that task. It's something they couldn't possibly do without a device. And it really benefits them in terms of ICT and the original task that they're doing. Okay, so that's quite an important model to think about really when you're using ICT in your classroom. What and how is this benefiting the original task? How is this embellishing it? What am I teaching my students? Okay, so I think that's really important to bear in mind. So digital, I'm almost done and then we'll get into JIT mix. Digital storytelling, giving children digital tools so they can show what they know too. What they know too? Show you what they know. That's very grammatically incorrect. But basically you want them to show what they know, and they're going to do that by taking photos, shooting videos. Now, unfortunately, JIT Mix doesn't allow you to import videos, but J2 Create could. So that is another step up for the skills. Okay, so they could shoot a video and have that as a kind of visual story. Searching content, web search, so searching for images, importing those, being able to edit those. Recording audio. Documenting experiences, so the children can write down things that they know, things that they've experienced, things that they can reflect on. Presenting ideas that they've got. Integrating art that they want to create, so paintings, animations. They can edit photos. Telling a story, sharing with others, so beyond the teacher. So I think that is a key concept and actually a key motivator for a lot of students. If you think about a lot of the writing the children are doing on a day-to-day basis that's handwritten in the book, think about who's reading those pieces of work. Generally, it's you as a teacher, maybe the parents at parents' evening, possibly. Or maybe if it's on a wall, it might then be sort of have quite a nice, broad, authentic audience. But for most work that's in their books, nobody's going to read it. So the power of ICT, computing devices, is that you can share with others beyond the teacher. And it also enables your students to reflect and revisit content. Okay, so they can have a look, they can share it with others, they can reflect on what people have said about their work, they can revisit and implement those changes. Okay, right, so we're going to talk about JIT Mix in particular. So if this is brand new to you, you've never seen JIT Mix before, JIT Mix sits within the JIT toolkit. So as I said earlier, it's a toolkit of 8 tools. So we're only really going to focus on 4 of them. So we're going to look at paint, write, animate, and mix. Now, mix can be used in 2 different ways. And it's personal preference for you. It's also you knowing your students, their abilities, how much they've used JIT in the, previously. If they're quite confident using JIT, they can just go straight into JIT Mix. So the one way to use it is to create the content in the standalone tool. So to create a painting in Paint, to create an animation in Animate, or to create a writing document in Write. And then to open JIT Mix and to import those. So JIT Mix is almost like a wrapper for things that they've done in other sessions. So that's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it, and I would use this if your children are confident using those tools already, is to open up JIT Mix and they can use those tools within the JIT Mix itself. So that probably doesn't make a lot of sense just now, but I will show you shortly and it'll make more sense. So as I said, because this is digital storytelling, I'm really struggling to say that phrase, digital storytelling, I am going to focus on paint, write and animate. Okay, but obviously you are more than welcome at any point to add in any turtle, chart, pictogram or branch content that you might want to use. Okay, so these are just some examples of JIT Mix ebooks that I thought might be suitable for today's session. So I have got a non-fiction book, so I thought I'd start with this one. And I did make this last week. So this is a paint page with some text underneath. And you can use all the paint tools and we can carry on painting on this. And then I've got another page and this is a paint page. Now I could have done this using an animation instead. So I could have had, the frog spawn turning into a tadpole, the tadpole growing legs. But I didn't have a spare half a day to get that done. And that would be a lot of work. So that would definitely be for your much older students. So your year 5s, year 6s would be really good for doing something like that, which is your P6 or P7s in Northern Ireland and Scotland. But that's just to give you an idea of the kind of content that you could create. So there we go. And I did hand draw all these, which is why that frog looks a little bit dodgy. This is where, if you've got iPads in school, they will come into their own. I unfortunately have to draw with a mouse, and you can definitely tell. So let's have a look at our story retell with my lovely Gruffalo, who's looking a little bit dodgy as well. But again, this is a paint page, and I've drawn my own Gruffalo. I've used a clip art background. I've added my title, and then this is quite a nice book actually, because we've really combined a lot of different tools. So this is a paint page, but using a photograph as a background. No, this is a write page, sorry. Adding a photograph as a background and some text over the top. And we've got a paint page this time. So we've got our mouse and our fox and writing over the top. And then moving on to an animation. So again, reflecting back on our Samo model, this is something that completely changes that task. We've got this scene. So where are you going to, little brown mouse? Come and have tea in my underground house. It's wonderfully kind of you, fox, but no, I'm going to have tea with a Gruffalo. So it's completely redefined that particular aspect of the book. Really got the children to have a think about, you know, the characters, where they're moving, having conversation, using speech bubbles. They might need to use speech marks, using punctuation, grammar, spelling. Okay, so that's a nice example. And then we've got this one. So I did just knock this up quite quickly this morning. And this, instead of a story retell, this is a story that I would say I've written it myself, but I used AI to help me with this. Full transparency, I haven't written this story. But you get the idea. So you could do this as an activity in your classroom. So The Friendly Alien by Miss Kimball. We've got an AI image here and some text. So this is a paint page, some text underneath. And then again, we've got an animation. This will play automatically. So we've got our alien, and that is reflecting what we've written in the text here. Okay, so those are 3 examples of JIT mix activities that you could use in your classroom. And you can really start this quite early on. I personally would probably use mix. Now, thinking back to some of my classes, some of my year 2s could have coped with it some years. Some year 2s would not. So it really depends on their capabilities, their maturity, their understanding. So you could, that's your year 2 P3, but definitely from your year 3 P4 classes upwards could cope with this. So that year 2 is a bit of a, sometimes they can, sometimes they can't. You could use these, you know, very simple stories to start with, but utilize all those different modes of communication. So your paint, your animate, your writing. Right, so before we have a look at JIT mix, the planning side of things now, you know, I'm not really going to advise you on the actual writing of the story itself. That's not my expertise at all, says the girl that used AI to write a story. But the planning documents are there to help you and to help the kids plan out their work. And these are found in the library. So you can look for this one under storyboard template. And here we go. So if you're new to the library, it is from your Launchpad. It is there, okay? And we have, I think there's 2,500 resources in there now, possibly more. And this one's quite nice. So you can set this as digital works. You can share this with your students by clicking share. They can only access content that's shared with them. So they can click this and they can start typing into it. They can add photos in, they can add clip art, they can draw over the top of it, they can add text, they can add audio. Okay, so that's really good for their planning. Or you can print this out as a teacher if you needed to. So you can print that out and they could use that as a offline activity to then have as a hard copy to use for their mixed document if you wanted to. So that's one version. So you can look for that, you're just looking for a storyboard. Or there's the story arc. So it really depends on, you know, which version you want to use. And again, that works exactly the same way. You can either print it, use it as a digital copy, but you just have to make sure that you share it so the students can access it. So those can really help you with the planning aspect of the JIT mix storytelling. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you write very quickly, paint very quickly, animate very quickly, so that you know how to use those. and then we'll look at JIT Mix and how we can wrap that up. So JIT Write is a lovely tool. It allows you to add backgrounds, so they can be the clip art backgrounds that we have as default or photographs. Okay, and JIT Write is designed to be able to add text over the top. Now, I'm trying to think of the word. The downside of JIT Write is that there aren't many formatting tools, so it is designed to be a very, very simple word processing tool. Okay, so in terms of, we have this question a lot, can you, align it in the middle? Can you make the, text go to the bottom right hand corner? You can't really. You can use your space bar and your enter bar, but that's enter key, but that is the only sort of formatting tool. It is designed to be very simple to use. Okay, you can edit the text, so size, font, color. You can use word lists for spelling, text to speech and speech to text for dictation, and you can save. So let's have a look very quickly. So JIT is here, and it will open up automatically into Write. So a few things that I always point out when I'm training JIT. And if you are brand new to the site, this is a fab place to start, is to use the JIT tools. So we've got our JIT tools along the top. And as I said, it always opens up in Write. Sounds obvious, but the page color always changes color depending on what tool you're using. So for example, I'm going to do a pictogram lesson with my students. I will be able to see at the back of the classroom which student is off drawing a lovely painting because their iPad screen is going to be blue. So there's a really nice classroom management tool. Okay, sounds really obvious, but it has helped quite a lot of teachers to keep their class on task, which was always an issue for mine. And there we go. So JIT always opens up, prompting you to choose either a template or a background. So we've got various backgrounds to choose from, so we can use these, sort of scroll down. Okay, there's lots of backgrounds to choose from. So some of these will be really nice for existing topics that you're doing in class. So maybe you're doing the Jungle Book, so you could have a jungle. Maybe you're doing Intrepid Explorers, so you could have an iceberg. Maybe you're doing a space book, so they could create a space text, aliens. So there's lots already preset, and they are really quite sweet and well drawn. Okay, what's nice about the clip art ones is that if you, so for example, if we click on iceberg, it does kind of format the text quite nicely, so that will be in the middle of the page, so you can start drawing, start typing here. To load that background, you just click on that asterisk again. Now the alternative is you can use pictures. So you can save things in Paint to your My Files and use those as a background. So you can see here, these are sort of images that I have saved. You've also, so that looks in your My Files. You've also got shared files. You can import. So that's quite a useful button there, which annoyingly is hidden. So if you've got something on your hard drive or your server at school, you can click that and click open. But this is the one that I really wanted to show you, was this camera button. That wasn't what I wanted to show you at all. I did not want to show you my very messy dining room. I wanted to show you this button, the globe. So that is the Google search button. And that allows you to look for any photo. So for example, if I was doing the Gruffalo, I might want a forest background. So I can look for forest, and there we go. I could look for space. Okay, if you're doing maybe some poetry about something, you could have spring is coming up, so we could have a springtime poem. So there we go. Okay, I think I'm going to stick with forest, and I think I'm going to stick with my Gruffalo. So let's find, there we go, that's a beautiful picture, lovely. And there we go. So we can add that as a background. So it's a nice way if you wanted to use the clip art with your little ones, the younger students, and then maybe revisit it later. You could have photograph backgrounds. You could use that to inspire the writing as well. So a few quick tips. We can start right. So we could say the Gruffalo, and obviously that is going to have a capital letter because it's the name. And we could have that as our title page. So we're going to say by Miss Kimball. And there we go. Now, clearly that is hidden amongst my trees. It's not very clear. So that's when you can start talking to your students about, right, the use of colour is really going to help. The use of size of text. And the one thing that I like is that the children don't need to click and highlight anything to change it, because that always used to trip a lot of my students up, is the click and drag, which is quite a high level skill. Certainly in terms of like fine motor skill, I've had a lot of children that really struggle with the click with one finger hold. I had a lot of staff that struggled with the left click and hold, let alone children. A lot of staff still clicking on the right hand mouse. Anyway, I digress. So they can change the font, they can change the colour, they don't have to highlight anything. Okay, oh, that's nice. As I said, there's not many formatting tools, so that's when you start to use maybe your enter button and your space bar. So we can centralise that, but you're going to have to use those instead. There we go. That looks lovely. Other things to make you aware of, we have got word lists within JIT Write, so that really helps to support those students that need that extra bit of support. So they can listen to any of these words, Mum, and it will say it to them, and they can click on any of those words, and that's going to add that into that text for them. So that is one aspect of support in terms of accessibility. Really, it levels the playing field a little bit, because you'll get students that need that support and can delve into it, and students that don't need that support. And there are lots of word lists to choose from. And then lastly, we've also got our speech to text at the top. So this is a way that students can dictate their work. So they can click this. All they have to do is press this little record button. They do need sentence at a time. So I'm just going to click this, the Gruffalo, and it actually understood my Midlands accent, which is a miracle. And there we go, and you can see it's spelled correctly, and the children can add text, and that is going to add that into that document for them. They have to add in punctuation, they can delete things out, but there you go, you get the idea. So that is speech to text. That will work in different languages as well. So if you are joining us from an Irish school, or I'm not sure if we've got Welsh or not. I have to double check that. But it definitely works in Gaelic. So just be aware. And then we've also got the the text to speech. So this will say what is on my page. The Gruffalo by Miss Kimball. And really helps the children to reflect back. Okay. So that is JIT Write. So we'll have that as Gruffalo front page, so you can rename it, and then we click save. The children get some feedback that something is happening. Again, another bugbear of mine, that my students they'd keep clicking the save button because nothing looked like it was happening. So they get that little turny circle, and they also, the save button, can you see it's sort of greyed out, it's almost disappeared. So they can only save one copy of that, unless they make some more changes, of course. If they were to review that, change it, then they can change another copy. It's going to save the most recent version. So I think that's a really small thing, but something that's really important and something that you value if you've actually worked with children and technology. It's all these little things that, that can tip you over the edge quite easily. So that is how you can create JIT Write. And we've saved that as a JIT Write file, so we can have that as it's just a standalone JIT Write, but we can also use it in JIT Mix a bit later. Okay, so we've got to use that as our front page. Now, I haven't changed that. This should be JIT Paint. I suddenly realised at 3 o'clock that I hadn't put a JIT Paint page in. So these are just examples of characters that I've drawn over the last few months. So I've got my Grinch, because I did a lot of Grinch resources before Christmas. This is a hand-drawn caterpillar. The background was not hand-drawn, but the caterpillar was not hand-drawn. Took me a while. Gruffalo, I mean, that looks hand-drawn, so yeah. And Elmer, I actually used a background, but I coloured in all the squares, and that is available on the library to share. So that is a paint activity, but you can use it in other tools. So JIT Paint allows you to add backgrounds, so the clip art or photographs exactly the same as in JIT Write. You can draw using all the drawing tools. You can add images, both the clip art library images and also Google images. I'll try not to show my messy dining room again. You can add text and speech bubbles, and you can save. So let's have a look at Paint. So Paint is here. And again, the interface stays very consistent, which I think is really important. The students really quickly are able to navigate the tool because it looks the same in all of the tools. So they choose a template background, as you can see. They've got all the same ones, but they've also got some black and white ones. So incidentally, because I know with the younger ones, you really need to teach them discrete digital skills. So things like using the left click, using the fill tool, being able to colour things in, being able to follow a line, click and hold. So these colouring in ones are really useful for that because they can use the fill tool and fill bits in and figure out how to use the left click. So that's just by the by. So there's lots to choose from, and there's some seasonal ones as you go down the bottom, and a map. So great for your world around us topics. So we've also got blank ones that can, you know, create their own drawing. And again, same as with JIT, right, we've got our pictures. So those are the pictures that we've, you know, created and saved. You can share pictures. You can import them from external sources. You can take a photograph. So that's a really nice activity, and one that I have done with students where they took a selfie. So again, great discrete ICT skills because they learn how to take a good photograph, and then they draw over the top of it to make themselves a superhero. So if you are doing a superhero theme, that's a really good activity, and the kids loved it. So once you've taken a photo, you can draw over the top of it. Or I've had teachers take photographs of the class playground and then add in things like UFOs and dinosaurs to create that as a hook for writing. So that's a nice example. So yeah, so utilize that photograph tool. But we've also got the web search. Okay, so let's go for forest. I'm going to stick with my Gruffalo theme because obviously my mix is going to be about the Gruffalo. So let's choose a different forest. Yeah, let's go for this one this time. And there we go. So we've got our forest, and we can add content onto that. So we can choose, can click on the animals. You've also got the ability to be able to draw over the top. So, you know, you can draw things. So if I wanted to hand draw the Gruffalo, which I'm not going to do live on a webinar, you have that option, and you can change the size of your paint tool. You've got the fill option, which doesn't work very well on a photograph. She says, I'm going to try and, yeah, really doesn't work very well on a photograph. But if you have blank, here we go, let's try here. No, there we go, so you can see. But if you have blank static pieces of colour, that will fill in quite nicely. And then you've got your clip art. So there are lots of clip art libraries. There's speech bubble and text as well. So that's how you would layer that up. And you've got faces, fairy tales, aliens, dinosaurs. So lots of lovely digital storytelling art ready to go. You know, characters that you can use. You've got mini beasts, plants, people. So if you are doing, you know, various communities around the world, we've got things like Inuits and farmers and chefs and firefighters, doctors, nurses. So lots of, you know, people that help us. So yeah, so have a look. And then obviously the same as with the others, you've got the ability to add in photos or web search. So I don't think we will find the Gruffalo, but let's have a look. Oh, I think this might be a struggle because he will probably have a white box around him. Yes. So a lot of them are going to have that white box, but if I stamp him, let's see if I can erase and take that white box away, and that will leave that photograph in the background. So they fixed that. That didn't used to do that. I was pressing that and hoping for the best, and there we go. So it used to work like that with clip art backgrounds, but not photographs, but they fixed it. So that is fantastic. So if you do find them with a white background, just use the erase tool, the fill tool, and that will take that away. And there we go. So we have our Gruffalo. We could add in a mouse. So let's add in our mouse. You can flip them around, layer in there, use my erase tool and erase that box, and there we go. Okay, and we could add some text if we wanted to. I'm going to use this speech bubble, so I'm going to say, hello, little mouse. And that will add that into that box, and I can make that a bit bigger and stamp that like that. And there we go. So then I'm going to save that. So I'm going to say mouse page, and I'm going to save. So I'm going to click that save button. So I'm just conscious I am running out of time. If you've been on my webinars before, you'll know this is a common issue for me. I really should just make them an hour and a half and then just, you know, finish early. But so yes, apologies if you have to run off. Please feel free to run off at 4:15. I will try and be as quick as I can. So that is JIT Paint. You also have the option to save as image and also save as stamp. So this save as stamp is really good if you are creating characters that you want to use elsewhere. So things like if you're creating a character for an animation. So that's what we did with the caterpillar in the Very Hungry Caterpillar, and also the Gruffalo. So you would draw your character on a blank background and then save it as a stamp. Now, there is a video on how to do that on our YouTube channel. It's like a minute long, and that will help you to understand why you might do that, but we're not going to get into it today. But there you go. So that is JIT Paint, allowing you to add backgrounds, draw, add images, change the images as you want to. Then we'll talk about animate. So here you go. So this is you can see here, this is my caterpillar. So I drew that in Paint on a blank background. Then I clicked on that Save as Stamp, which then allows me to use my caterpillar. So that will save it into your My Stamps. Now he's quite far back, so I'm going to have to keep clicking and try and find my caterpillar because I saved him a long time ago. So there's my butterfly. There's his head. Oh, there we go. So that would be the same sort of concept. So we've got our cake with the whole eaten out of it, and that is saved as a stamp. Okay, so that just gives you an example of how we might use the animation to tell part of our story. So again, remember, this is that kind of remodification aspect. So we've got our character, we're telling the story, but we're not telling it through just written. Okay. So I'm not going to show you how to animate because there is a video about this on YouTube. It's very similar to Paint. So I'm just going to show you just a new one. So this is Park. So we've got our mini beast. So we can add, we've got our different frames. We go to a different frame and we add in, it's called onion skinning. And I have a live lesson on this actually, which I'm going to show you where my live lessons are. And we onion skin our character into each frame, and then we add more frames. I should have had a fox and a mouse. That was silly, wasn't it? And there we go. So there is our very quick animation with our little character. Okay. So imagine you could create your own characters for this. All of the same clip art that you have in Paint is available in Animate. So that's really great, you know, and it's definitely a skills progression thing. I would start them in Paint. Once they can use Paint, they can use Animate. Really easy. So all the tools are in the same place. It's just a case of the frames are like little paint pictures that run together very quickly to make it look like it's moving. So that's how you can use Animate. As I said, there is a live lesson. There's a few live lessons on Animate actually, so I'll show you where those are. So let's just have this as Ant. I'm going to save that. It's going to give me my saving circle. The bigger the animation, the longer that process takes, so just be aware. And then we've got Mix. Okay, I am going to run over. I'm sorry. I will try and get this done in about 10 minutes. So Mix works ever so slightly differently to the other tools. If I was devising a plan for school, I would make sure that my students are completely proficient in using the other 7 tools first before moving them to Mix. So as I said, year 2s, definitely year 3s, so your P3s, definitely year 4s should be able to use this quite easily, really, as long as you're using those tools in your lower classes. Okay, so JIT Mix, it allows you to create an ebook, so it's almost like a wrapper. Okay, and the first thing you need to do is to choose your page layout. So you can see here we've got 4 different page layouts. So I create a front page in Write for my Gruffalo picture. Okay, so I just want a writing page on its own. I don't want any writing underneath because I've already got that writing on my front page. So I've chosen this page layout. Then I need to think about which tool I want to use. So I used Write. So these arrows here will change the tool. So that is a chart page. That is a pictogram page. So you can see the color correlates here. That is an animate page, a branch page, and a Write page. So that's what I want. I want my Write page. If I had a painting, I would have a blue page. If I wanted my animate page, I would have a pink page. Hopefully that makes sense. And actually this tripped me up when I first started working at the company. I didn't realize this for probably about a year, that you can change these. So it's not overly obvious, but once you know, it is obvious, if that makes sense. So then when you've chosen your page layout and your tool, that's when you click tick. Okay, so I can use this like I did with a Write page. So I can start writing onto this page if I wanted to. I've got all my Write tools here. So I can have this as a blank file. Alternatively, you'll notice these 2 buttons at the top. Okay, so I've got star and I've got my load. So these are, the star will load up the backgrounds or the templates. So I've got my backgrounds that I can choose. So same as we had in JIT Write, that's how you would access the backgrounds for that. And you've got the same functionality, you've got the same pictures and that kind of thing. So that's the asterisk, and this load button, that is how you would load content that you made elsewhere. Okay, so you can see there is that Gruffalo Write that I made earlier. So I can add that in. So I could add that in like that, and there we go. So this is what I mean. You can either do it in Write and add it in, or you can open up JIT Mix. So instead I could have done that activity by clicking on my asterisk, searching for forest, finding that forest picture, which is here, and then adding my text over the top. So hopefully that makes sense. Really, it depends completely on your capabilities, your students' capabilities, their confidence level, what tools you're using, that kind of thing. So I'll just say Gruffalo. And there you go. So I can do all the stuff that I did earlier with Write. I'm just going to add that in as a page. So there we go. Okay. And then you can add in another page. So I'm going to add, this time I'm going to add in that painting that I did earlier. And I want it with some writing underneath. So I'm going to choose this particular page and I'm going to click tick. Okay. And again, I can add in. So I'm going to add in that load button. There's that mouse page that I created. Or I could use the asterisk and I could add in and paint directly onto that page. I can add some text underneath. So I could say the Gruffalo. I've forgotten how to spell Gruffalo. Met a mouse in the deep dark wood. Okay. Now the other nice thing that I haven't, I spelled that wrong, that I haven't pointed out is the ability to record audio. Now this has just recently been redeveloped. It used to be a bit irritating in that you could only record 1 piece of audio per book. So it was just 1 audio file, no matter how many pages you had. It's changed now, so the audio links to the page. So I can hit this record button. It's a very simple recorder, so record, stop, play. Okay, so very simple for the children to use. And you can use this in many different ways. So it could be the children reflecting on their learning. It could be them reading what they've written. It could be them recording what's happening in the story instead of writing it down. So again, remember, that is the remodification side of things. It is, you know, being able to have an audio or a sound effect and to embellish things into their story. So I'm just going to record this. The Gruffalo met a mouse in the deep, dark wood. And they could add in sound effects if they wanted to. Click OK, and that is linked to that particular page. Okay. And then I'm just going to add one more page, just to give you an example. And this time I'm going to add in an animation page. So there we go. And I just want animation on its own. Now these pages are quite nice. I'm just going to show you, they do have a little bit more limitation in that you can only add write, paint, turtle, or chart. You can't add animations of these because the screen's too small. But this one you can add all of them, and you've got your text along the side. So it really depends on what page you want. And click tick. And again, this works in exactly the same way. You've got your asterisk at the top, so you can load in a background if you wanted to. You've got your animate tools along the left-hand side, so we can animate on top of that page. Or you've got your load button, so you can add in. I'm going to see if I should have a Gruffalo page somewhere. You can see I've got Christmas animations, caterpillar animations, Halloween, Titanic. That was a good live lesson on animation. There they are. There's my Gruffalo, and there we go. So I can have that as a page, and it will play. And I created that in Animate, and there we go. So that is a whole scene where the mouse meets the fox and what they say. Again, that remodification. Okay. And then once I'm done, let's have a look. Let's go Gruffalo, and I'm going to have Jan 25, and we save that, and that will save. So the children could, at the end of each lesson, add another page to their JIT mix and add to their story, or you could have each lesson you use a tool. So you could use write in one lesson, paint in another lesson, animate in another lesson, and then their final lesson is putting everything into the JIT mix file. It's whatever you really prefer, but they can open this JIT mix and keep adding and keep adding and keep adding, which is another benefit to using the ICT. Okay, it's, you know, they don't have to just do it all in one go. They've got the option. So some ideas for animate. So animating a seed growing, so great link for your science curriculum. Animating conversations in French. So nice links to your MFL, so creating stories in French if you really wanted to. Animating the coronation, so great links to your current topics, current affairs. And animating a familiar story. So this is a beautiful one that was posted, a student created around Superworm. Okay, so lots of nice links. And there we go. So there is JIT mix. Right. Sorry, I ran over, luckily only by about 3 minutes. So I am almost wrapping up, but just to give you some contact details, you can contact us at edteam@jit.com. So that comes through to Mary. I'm not Mary, by the way, I'm Nikki, despite what it says on my screen. Me, Nikki, Mary, and Charlie. My name's Nikki. So that will come through to 3 of us, and we'll be able to answer any questions that you might have. We're on Facebook and X, formerly known as Twitter, so just look for justtooeasy.com. And in fact, there is a Facebook group for teachers where we share things like plans, activity ideas, competitions. So just look for Just Too Easy Teachers and feel free to apply to join for that. And lastly, we've got our Just Too Easy TV. So that is our YouTube channel. So we have quite a few subscribers now. This is where you'll find all of the webinars, including this one. This will be on there later on tonight. We've got loads that we've recorded recently, like online safety, supporting literacy, and we've got our live lesson recordings. So if you haven't seen these, I will teach your class for you. So we have recorded, we've got quite a few now. So I click on live lesson recordings. You can see here I've got things like JIT Paint and Animate, JIT Paint and Write, smart rules for your Safer Internet Day, and we've got some coming up soon. So if you go to justtooeasy.com and you go to your events page here, We've got robot algorithms tomorrow. So if you're doing any coding, we've got using JIT Paint and J2 Journal on Thursday. Next week, I've got two. I've got Safer Internet Day for Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2, and loads more coming up. So you can register for those there. Okay. So that's enough of me talking at you. Have we got any questions? Please feel free to add them into the chat. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. If not, thank you so much for your precious time. I'm sorry I've run over, but hopefully you've found it useful. Please feel free to share any of the content that you make with your pupils as well. I personally get a real thrill out of seeing the students' content. So please feel free to share it on socials and tag us in it. Make sure you tag us, otherwise we don't see it. And thank you for the feedback. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I will send out a feedback form later. It just helps me to develop my own personal development, professional development, and personal. Okay. I will hang around for a second or two, see if there's any questions. You're very welcome. Thank you for the feedback. Hopefully you've enjoyed